And here we are. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for now the third episode of Actualizing Your Authentic Self. I am Vita from Rooted Arts, and I'm so grateful that you all keep tuning in and spending time with us here. And I'm super grateful tonight and honored to be joined by Meg Evans. Meg, would you like to introduce yourself?
Everybody. Happy June 3rd, the third day of Pride Month. My name is Meg Evans. Any and all pronouns work for me. Most quickly respond to they, them. Um, Professionally, I serve as assistant professor of higher and adult education in the Department of Leadership at the University of Memphis. And I do lots of consulting. Personally, I serve as a parent to two wonderful kids, Zeke and True, 7 and 1, almost 7 and 2. Um, and coming to you from the sunny Gulf Coast. And what else do you need to know about me? It's probably it. I'm a proud Warren Wilson College alum, alongside Vita many moons ago. I won't say quite how many moons, but it's been one or two.
It's been
Uh, and a master's degree in community leadership from Duquesne University and PhD in higher ed administration and college student affairs from the University of Georgia. Go Dogs. That's all I got.
Okay. Thanks so much. And Philip, our moderator, who's in the chat again, just called out Happy Pride Month also. Woot! And is also a Warren Wilson graduate. Um, Owls make the best.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you so much, Philip, for continuing to support this project. He is here from Skydancer Media. So we're going to take a moment and I'm just going to breathe us into the space. So everyone go ahead and settle in to a position that feels comfortable for you. You can close your eyes if you want. And just bring your attention to following your breath. Notice any sensations in your body. Simply noticing them. Allowing yourself to be where you are as you are. Knowing that every moment, every breath is the exact perfect starting place to move to where you want to be. One more deep breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and rejoin the space. Tonight, Meg and I are going to be chatting about some questions that we've agreed to bring to the table. Anyone in the chat, please feel welcome to share questions and comments. I'll be sharing them with Meg because they don't have eyes on the chat, but we're happy to respond to them, interact with them. And then Meg will be sharing a practice with us. So our first question today is, how do you tune into your authentic self-expression?
So my first thought about this question was instantly connected, not just because it's Pride Month, though we're going to talk about it because it is Pride Month, and I'll talk about it any other month, is there growing up, I identify as queer and trans non-binary. And growing up, there were no models like there are now. And I'm not saying there's a ton now, but there are some. But there were no models in the 80s and 90s of positive, productive, thoughtful, and kind masculine of center AFAB folks, masculine of center folks who were assigned female at birth. And anybody who was perceived to be mask, butch, stud, trans mask was always perceived as or projected as hard, mean, um, not welcoming, not kind, not soft, all the things that I felt like I was, yet I felt so deeply connected to masculinity. And so for me, in thinking about how have I kind of gotten on this journey of uncovering, my authentic self, so much of it was unlearning inherited scripts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unlearning what I was told at home. I grew up evangelical Christian at the largest Christian church in America, which we could talk about for the next hour together, but it's probably for another conversation. But I was getting so many scripts there. There was a Pray Away the Gay program that, right? So many scripts there. Um, I was an athlete all growing up. There was a lot of scripts associated with that, what I should look like, what my body should look like, how I should move and carry myself. And so the first thing that came to my mind when I read this question and started thinking about it was, whose scripts am I carrying? What
Mm-hmm.
have I inherited? What am I still holding? And what did I have to unlearn?
Mm-hmm.
And then how did I relearn in a way that felt much more authentically me?
Yeah. Yeah, those are, I feel like those are all of those questions are such great exploratory questions.
Mm-hmm.
I always find that the best inroad is really just curiosity, just
Mm-hmm.
being curious. And one of the things that I support myself with is the practice of not assuming that my first thought is what I really believe, desire,
Mm-hmm.
and what really represents me.
Mm-hmm.
And to just
Mm-hmm.
stay curious about those reactions, because that the scripts that we pick up can be insidious.
Well, and it's a bit like, especially if they're kind of big T truths or the dominant narrative, right? It's the air we breathe.
Hmm.
And it just is, unless we interrogate it and unpack it, right? And so those inherited scripts, if you align with it, right? So for a lot of my cisgender kin, it feels right. It fits. The script fits, right? For some,
I mean,
right? For some pieces of it, right? That you then don't have to interrogate. And for me, none of them fit,
yeah.
right? Um, the only thing I still feel deeply connected to and rooted to a sense of femininity in a way that makes me feel like femininity and being a woman is power, which I know is not the traditional script, but it's how I've seen it. So I still feel deeply connected to that.
Hmm.
Um, and have a deep sense of wanting to take care and wanting to serve, which is tied to femininity and not valued, right? Um, and
Actually,
simultaneously deeply connected to masculinity, right? And so for me, again, really think interrogating those big T truths and dominant narratives that just didn't ever feel like I was welcomed into.
yeah, and that's such an interesting perspective, right? This is like you just keyed into my head a way that we differently interpret and internalize things. Because for me, I mean, I've always been a voracious reader from a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
and reading stories that had shamans in them,
Mm-hmm.
both in like fantasy or historical fiction,
Mm-hmm.
or even in like traditional, shamans
Mm-hmm.
out of historical traditions.
Yeah.
I, my mental association is that more than often there is a non-binary quality. Like
Huh.
even if a person identifies, a shaman identifies as male or female, there is an androgyny. And in a lot of the stories that I read as a child, It was a just somebody whose sex was unknown, whose gender
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
unknown. And
yeah.
so right, it's like the way, I mean, I think that difference of perspective
Mm-hmm.
really speaks to the way that our role models can plug in these
Mm-hmm.
scripts, and it can be so different, even though it seems like everybody is on the same page,
Mm-hmm.
because it's our everybody as like a
That's
as
right.
a small person, right? Or
That's right.
as a person inside of formative years who's just
Mm-hmm.
swallowing everything and really
Mm-hmm.
integrating the information in a way that we believe that it's us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we create our own what is, right? We
Mhm.
create our own context, we create our own standard. So then we move through a world with the assumption that everybody else is living in that same context,
Mhm.
has read the same books, experienced the same things, navigated through life the same, right? And then we place others' expectations and um, others' intent based on what we think it should be,
Yeah.
right? Uh, that becomes a dangerous script, I think, both in the interpersonal, right, kind of one-on-one, but it becomes even more dangerous when it becomes the big T truth, when it
Mhm.
becomes the dominant narrative, right? Another way that I was thinking about this when you had posed the question was thinking, what other scripts do I adhere to that I'm just unaware of, right? And I think I do in my work. I am a critical scholar, and I study um, advocacy, activism, and resistance in higher ed, and I also study race, racism, and white supremacy in higher ed. And so I think a lot about what whiteness has demanded of me and what the script around being white has expected of me, right? And how I adhere to that and how I've kind of broken or bucked that, right? And so part of thinking about how have I been authentically me, it's a lot of it has been first recognizing how whiteness has showed up in my life,
Mhm.
right? How I've absolutely benefited from systems and structures that are white supremacist in nature, um, and how I've learned to recognize it, unpack it, unlearn it, and relearn with more equitable scripts, right? Um, but so much of learning to be our authentic self, no, not even my authentic self, has been a process of awareness, unlearning, and relearning.
Sure.
It just feels like a full cycle over and over that I'm doing constantly in both my personal life and professional life, as a critical scholar.
Yeah, so let's move into our second question with that, which is how do you tune into your authentic self-expression? Right? Because we're thinking about these
Mm-hmm.
scripts and exploring them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, a big piece for me is through reflection. And I know that sounds benign. Like, of course, you need to do reflection in order to, be your.
Philip just shared in the chat. Definitely the learning is forever. Yet another growth opportunity, I sometimes mutter.
Always. Sorry about it. Sorry about it.
Right.
It's true though. It is never done. It is never done. Uh, well, they say social justice is a process and a goal, right? Uh, it's never done. Particularly when we're pushing back on systems and structures that are. But to answer your question, I think, and to go back to what I was talking about, reflection, not only self-reflection, not only becoming aware and doing a lot of self-reflection, but also surrounding myself with people who reflect back to me my authentic self.
Mhm.
Being around folks where there's no pretense, there's no posturing. I don't have to say the right thing or do the right thing. I can just show up
Yeah.
and them reflect back to me what they're seeing, what they're feeling, how what I've said, done, engaged is kind of reflecting, or they're receiving it and they reflect it back to me. Um, has been a huge way that I have been able to tap into my authentic self, really who I am, and being really mindful of creating those spaces with folks who don't always look like me, engage in the world like me, move through the world like me, um, has been really helpful. And I don't mean that in a performative, like, oh, find other people that don't look like you and be in authentic community, right? But being in real relationships where there's a sense of simultaneous love and accountability has been really, really helpful for me.
I just realized I asked the question twice and I called it the second question.
We
But
went into we went into more practical application. It
yeah,
was kind of heavy.
I love that, like, I love that the way that you're talking about mirroring, because I or reflecting back to you, because I think about it often, but in a metaphysical standpoint,
Mm-hmm,
like the right, my belief structure is that everything is God, right? All of
mm-hmm.
us are one
Sure.
organism together, and that's divinity. And
Mm-hmm,
uh, and so anything that I am like is reflected back to me by the rest of the divine, regardless where I am, like of where I am. But the context that is reflecting back to me can be rougher depending on
mm-hmm,
how the mirroring is happening and what the other
mm-hmm,
person is putting into the mirroring.
mm-hmm,
So it's interesting to think about it, like, just from like a psychological standpoint of
mm-hmm,
reflecting behavioral patterns at each other.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I like your point because I do agree that we will get different reflective points from different areas and spaces. And I think for me as an educator, I often feel like I'm performing,
Mm,
right? Because I'm interested in the learning of other folks. I'm interested in showing up where folks are to
hmm
help them move from A to Z,
hmm
right? And where they are isn't always where I am,
Yeah.
right? And so when I think about mirroring and becoming my authentic self, it's being in spaces where folks are meeting me where I am,
Yes. Yeah. Sure.
right?
hmm
Um, and then reflecting that to me,
Yeah.
not a performative version of me. And I don't mean I walk into the classroom and I'm like, da 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 da, you will not know the real me, right? Because you're going to get the same me in the classroom that you're going to get inside my house, that you're going to get if you read anything that I've written, if I show up in your house, if I go give a keynote at, I'm going to be the same me. I'm not saying you know, uh, am an expert code switcher in that sort of way. However, my best learning comes when the guard is down and there's no pretense.
hmm
And I'm not educating, I'm just showing up, right? Um, and that's the mirror that I see most clearly. But I do agree in that in every space, in every way, who we are and how we engage is mirrored back to us.
Yeah, and I think it's another reflection on how perspectives can be different and based on our training and focus, right?
Mm-hmm, for
Like,
sure.
I think both of us are focused on supporting people and showing up in
Yeah,
the world in a positive way, and also just with different flavors.
that's right. Actually, so speaking of when I was thinking about this question, the first place, if I'm being really honest with you, other than like, thinking about, oh, in my gender identity and sexual identity, thinking how I had to pave my own way and that, the next thing I thought was an activity, right? It was like I was instantly went into educator brain and thought about this activity that I'm happy to share if we want to talk about it. But this activity that is a snapshot of where we are at any given day time point and how the different pieces of who we are overlap and make meaning of one another, and it's a snapshot of the moment. And it's a tool I use so often in so many workshops and classroom settings and consulting gigs that I do is this particular activity, particularly over the course of time. And it is a way in which folks can take what I think is the first step in tuning into your authentic self is an awareness.
Hmm.
And this activity is, for me, a first step, a way that we can help folks get to that first step of awareness. But it's just funny that you were like, yeah, we have it in different flavors. And I was like, yeah, because instantly my brain went to, how can I help others do this?
Yeah.
Right? How
Yeah.
can I lead others to a place where they can say, oh, I never thought of it that way before, right? But I
Yeah.
was like, no, Meg, this is about you. Think about you. How have you gotten there, right?
Is that the practice that you have planned for us in a little bit?
No,
Then
the
then I would love to hear a little bit more about
okay,
how you
great,
take a snapshot. Yeah.
great. So there's an activity. I've called it a number of different things, identity circles, all kinds of different things. But essentially, what I have folks do is take a little bit of time, take, 2 or 3 minutes. A lot of times I'll do the length of half a song, maybe, or a short song, and write down different identities they hold, right? And that can be anything they're thinking of. So, for me, often I say white, trans, non-binary, queer, a parent, fat or fat bodied, vegetarian, um, Irish Hungarian, on and on, right? You get it. So I have folks write those down. And then the next thing I do is explain what we'll do with these next is put them into circles. And so the size of the circle indicates how salient it is to you, meaning how much it shows up for you and how much you engage with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a small circle is going to be, I don't think about it often. It doesn't impact me that much. It's not very salient. It's not very present for me, right? To the largest circle that you can imagine, it impacts every day. It impacts how I move through the world and how I show up, right? So for me, my white identity and my non-binary identity are the two biggest ones for me. They
Mm-hmm.
impact everything that I do, how I move through the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have folks take those circles and overlap them as it makes sense to indicate a kind of intersecting of those identities, right? So my white and non-binary circles overlap pretty full,
Yeah.
right? I only understand what it means to be a white person through a non-binary lens. And I
Mm-hmm.
only understand what it means to be a trans non-binary person through a white lens,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
I put other pieces. So parent is another huge circle, right? It's a little bit smaller than the others, but it's still pretty big. I put that kind of that overlaps both of them. My children are biracial black, multiracial black, and as a non-binary parent, I'm neither mom nor dad. And so my parent name is Appa, and there are very few models of what it means to be neither mom nor dad. And so my circle goes over my racial identity and my gender identity, because I'm a white person raising black kids and I am a non-binary parent. And so, right, you can see kind of how those overlap, and then on and on and on, right? Um, but I think it is, I've done it now. I've done an activity like this or similar to this for many, many years now. And watching how my circles change, how they overlap. My eldest is 7, so I didn't have that parent circle before, right? So that's a new one. I tell folks all the time that when I was in high school, back in the 1900s, uh, I didn't really know I was white. I grew up in a really white neighborhood right outside Chicago. There were 2 black kids in my class, out of thousands, and I didn't really know. And I know I tell a lot of folks that, particularly folks of color, and they're like, "That is cuckoo bananas," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm aware." And um, now it's my biggest circle, right? So really thinking about how do you tap into your authentic self, the first piece of that is awareness and coming to understand, okay, really, who am I? What are the different parts of me that show up, impact how I move through the world? How do those interact with one another? How do I come to understand? How do I see myself not as a monolith that has to follow one simple trajectory, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And it's also, I love that it like illustrates how, not just how like you are and what's authentic to you, but also like our place in the world.
mhm.
I love that emphasis on like this is me, this is how I identify myself, and it intersects like in the it also intersects with how we're perceived by the world. And especially thinking about like that question of whiteness. I didn't realize what it meant to be white till I was well into my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I grew up with with parents who were in social justice, and I grew up going to strikes and doing all kinds of activism, and I didn't know. And I
I mean,
like I
that is the power of a script, though, isn't it? Then back to what we were talking about before. How has whiteness, I thought, what is whiteness demanded of me, right?
yeah.
It is such a powerful script
Mhm.
that if we don't interrogate it and don't unpack it, we won't find our authentic self
Yeah,
because we do what these scripts have told us, right?
absolutely.
Even you're saying, you were around communities of color, out doing justice-based work, right?
Yeah,
And still the script wasn't broken.
yeah, yeah.
It has power,
It does
man,
have
right?
power. Philip really loved that activity, by the way. He said
Oh, great.
he loves being able to see a literal record of how you perceived your identity categorically. What a cool activity.
Yeah. It's super fun too to do every 6 months. Sit down and do it, right? Because I was consulting for the last 5 years full time. I was doing it constantly at trainings, right? And so just watching it grow. And
Hmm.
then even just thinking, when I was in high school back in the 1900s, white wouldn't have even been a circle for me.
Right, right. Yeah.
Wouldn't have even been there.
So let's move into how do you navigate through discomfort?
Let me be honest with you. I was like, I can't say this, but I'm gonna say it. Obviously, my first instinct was just I run away from it.
Uh,
I'm that person, right? Um, and in my 40 some years of life on this planet, have learned that when I run from discomfort, it only gives it power. And
well,
so,
I want to call out that it can give us a break.
sure.
Right? Like if there's trauma associated with discomfort, if it's just too much at that moment, like it may be that we have to back up.
Sure.
Supports as two types, as either therapeutic or else as Advil, right? Like so
Hmm.
running away creates that maybe that space that you need. It's that
Mm-hmm.
Advil. It's that immediate resolution. It's
Mm-hmm.
not therapeutic. It's not creating a change that's going to make it better next time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want
Mm-hmm.
to but I want to validate that when we feel like we need to run away, it's like
I'll take it.
it's okay. Yeah.
I'll take that. And I received that and I'm gonna use it next time I
Okay.
want to run away. But I think there are times in which I certainly there are times that I need to run away and I receive what you're saying in it and that's important, right? There are things that are rooted in past stuff that I'm like, nah, that ain't for me. I'm moving through. Bye bye. I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah, well,
Right?
not today is a perfectly fine answer, right?
Yes, absolutely. Um, and I think when I really do need to move through discomfort because either I've caused harm, right, and I need to make amends for it, or in order to do what's next for me that I need or want to do next, I have to move through that. Then a strategy that I take, and this is going to be annoying because I'm going to sound academic, but as I think about it as research, right? And so
Yeah.
for me, I think when I'm doing my scholarship, I think, okay, what is the problem that I want to learn more about,
Hmm.
right? Um, and so I research whatever it is, right? So I figure out like I'm going to think about the thing that's causing me discomfort. Let's say I've caused somebody harm, right? That's now causing me discomfort because I don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I have to think about it like a study. What's the problem? What do I already know? What do I need to know more? What can I realistically come to know, right? What are the parameters or boundaries of this problem,
Mm.
right? What can I actually change? What can I actually fix, right? If the discomfort is I've caused somebody harm, I can't go unfix it and tell them to feel better,
Right. Yeah.
that I didn't mean it,
Yeah.
right? My intent is meaningless when I've caused impact, period.
Mhm.
Even if I didn't mean it, which hopefully I didn't, right? But if I caused it, I caused it,
Mhm.
right? But really thinking with that, what are the parameters or boundaries of this problem? What can I realistically come to know and or fix, right? Um, and then I can begin to see the discomfort as a place to grow. So when I can change it for myself as a naturally curious person, as a Gemini and an academic, I'm a naturally curious human being. I want to know how I can do better. I want to know how I can um, create spaces that feel better for other folks in it and myself simultaneously, right? So when I can do those things, when I can see what the problem is, figure out what I already know, what can I realistically learn, know, or change, then I can begin to see that discomfort as a place to grow, right? The reality is often, not always, but often we don't learn in comfort. We often learn when there's some discomfort or incongruence with what we thought we knew, what
Mm.
we thought we understood, what we thought we did.
So,
So,
yeah, to
yeah,
me, it feels like two steps. For me, it shows
sure,
up as two steps. It's like or maybe three, but but I notice that my discomfort, and I do some kind of self-soothing so that I can stay present
sure,
with it.
sure.
Some kind of self-support, right? Like whatever that is, give myself a hug, give myself a moment, do a breathing exercise, whatever it is.
And
Um,
mine is finding more information.
yes, yes,
That's
right.
mine.
Yeah, gather more information.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That
Hmm.
helps empower you. Yeah,
Hugely.
absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then I always want to look for like where is my power? So my
Hmm.
empowerment comes later. I give myself the support, and then I'm like, all right. So I'm responsible for in some way all of this. I
Yeah,
like no matter what the situation is,
yeah,
it goes back to mirroring, right? Like this
yeah.
has been mirrored back at me. I've participated. I showed up here. And and what was I carrying? What did I carry into the room with me? How do I feel about
Hmm.
it?
Hmm.
What actionable steps can I take right now?
Hmm.
And Jude just added that she loves the concept of learning from her discomfort. Yeah.
It's not easy, my friend. And I personally believe we learn the best when something is incongruent and causes us discomfort.
Mm,
Because we then want to, not we, I want to fix it. I don't want to be uncomfortable,
yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah. For
You
me,
know, if
that.
I have a splinter in my hand, I'm going to try to get it out,
Yeah.
right? It's the same thing to me. When I'm feeling a splinter in me, I want it to go, right? And so I find that the vast majority of my learning comes in discomfort. It can be physical discomfort, it can, or it could just be a discomfort from something shifting that I thought just was, I thought
Mhm.
was the way I did something, the way I believed, you know, and then something came and there was some dissonance provoking stimuli that made this not static anymore, right? It
Yeah.
made it waver. That's uncomfortable. That is discomfort.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where a lot of learning and growth happen.
Yeah, and I love to, right? So I'm sure I've said it to you. I love to say gentle is sustainable. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so for me, I see it as a cue. Discomfort is a cue. It's a prompt
Yes.
for me to notice that something has
Mm.
it is something inauthentic happened to me, because even if I
Yes.
was like a complete jerk, right? Like
Totally.
if it was authentic to me, I wouldn't notice. I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't feel
Yes.
rage. I wouldn't feel heated up about it. I wouldn't feel any of those things because it would just feel
Yeah.
like me, right?
It's a
And
rub.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Something. This
yeah.
is discomfort, right?
We're,
Something is happening here.
something is
Yeah.
happening. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, and then what is, I'm going to move us along here because our time is starting to race past, but I love the
How
conversation.
dare we? We just started
um,
talking. Okay.
so like in this state of discomfort, like, right,
Yeah.
what is one of your favorite self-care practices that you do in that place?
Yeah. I think in a state of discomfort, I think there, you said one, but I can't do just one.
That's fine.
So, the first one for me, I started when I introduced myself, I introduced myself as a parent. And so, as long as the discomfort is not coming from my children, usually grounding myself in being a parent and being really present with my wife and kids,
Hmm.
is really, really helpful for me. Um, Now, if the source of discomfort is them, uh, which it never is, obviously. My youngest
Life,
is
right? The
almost
people
my
that we
youngest is
love.
almost 2, and he's
Well,
really trying it. He's trying it.
I mean,
But
and like when I love someone, that is the
yes,
person who I'm going to be more sensitive to because I
a
care.
hundred percent, a
I
hundred
care.
percent, a
Yeah.
hundred, and
Yeah.
they know your things, right? But so for me, a huge part is like if it's not with my family, is finding time to be outside in nature and in the pool.
Hmm.
So for me, moving to a place that had a pool and just floating, it's a saltwater pool, so I just get in and float. There's
Yes.
something about the like literally releasing weight,
Hmm.
um, both metaphorically and physically releasing weight when I'm in the pool is really helpful for me. Um, and I love sports, particularly women's sports. And so I played sports my whole life. Vita knows she was my trainer in undergrad when I played soccer. And then I went on to play women's professional football. That's actually how I met my wife. I looked really good in football pants.
I bet you did.
So she agreed to marry me. Um, but watching her playing sports and having a goal, like a goal to win, play well, watch your team win, be in camaraderie with other people, that is a huge form of self-care for me. um, and the last one, we try to do it every weekend as a family, but go out and geocache, which is super nerdy.
It's super
But
fun though.
it gets
It's
us
puzzle
outside.
solving. Yeah.
Yes. It's competition, it's togetherness time, it's being outside, it's being in tune with my body, nature, and being hyper aware of what's around me.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters when you're geocaching. If anyone wants to talk about geocaching with me, please just let me know. Be glad to talk about it. But it's a practice for me that gets me so in tune with what is present. I
Hmm.
am very quick to move on to what's next, to go. I'm always thinking, I'm always ideating. I want to change the world. And geocaching's like, nah, sucker, focus on one thing here and now. Look at context, look at clues, work together with your wife or your kids or whomever you're geocaching, or yourself, and be really present on the moment. And that has been extraordinarily helpful for me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I guess I'll just quickly add that my first self-care that still is with me, like I remember as a child, is just going and leaning against a tree.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It helps me feel so grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And then did you have you had a practice to lead us through,
I had
or
a thought.
okay, do it. Yeah.
A
Yeah.
thought. So, um, And this ties back to your first question and your, how do you kind of tap into your authentic self? How or why? And so this connects to that. And so because it is Pride Month and I am deeply proud of who I am and how I have gotten to where I am,
Yeah.
I wanted to share a few things about Pride. So I wrote them down, so I'm going to read them. But Pride isn't just a celebration, right? It's an act of remembering, resistance, and reclamation. Um, in this month, and I would argue in all, we honor the joy and the struggle of what queer folks have brought us. Pride exists because many brave and selfless folks, many of them Black and brown trans women, refused silence and refused invisibility. So celebrating Pride means aligning with those who are still fighting for all of our safety, all of our dignity, and all of our full humanity in every space that we should occupy. Queer and trans people are whole exactly as we are, um, often long before we're understood. You don't have to get it or respect it. Our job isn't to evaluate anyone else's identity, but really, honestly, to co create a world where we can all authentically show up and be.
Yeah.
Love is not something that should be policed, and expression is not something that should be punished. So I encourage us all. The thought that I want to leave folks with is going back to what I had originally talked about with how I had to interrogate my own identities to be able to show up fully in the world. I encourage folks to interrogate your own, particularly around gender. Why do you do the things that you do? Is it because you feel like you have to, or because you're told you have to? You have to. Whose scripts have you inherited? What
Mhm.
feels good to you, and what doesn't? And if there's a possibility for you to give yourself permission to relieve yourself of what doesn't, I encourage folks to do that, because the more we can be who we are, the more love we can provide to other folks, because then we can actually give that love to ourselves. So I encourage folks to keep thinking about it and keep um, asking yourself, who am I? How do I show up? And how do I want to show up differently tomorrow?
I love that. That's beautiful, well written thoughts. Thank you for sharing
And
those.
happy Pride.
And happy Pride. If anyone has questions that they'd like to drop in the chat, you're welcome to, and we'll just be on here for a couple more minutes, or comments. Uh, but it brought a song to my mind of like just I'm not going to sing it right now, I don't think, but I love myself so much, so I can love me so much. Wait, so I can
Mm,
love you so much, so you can love you so much, so you can start loving me.
that's beautiful.
Right? It was,
Yep.
I learned it, Philip said, Happy Pride. um, I learned it as just like when I was doing leadership, spiritual leadership with teens.
Hmm.
It was something that they all sang together at camp that then they
Hmm.
shared with me. And just, and so I love that you shared that, right? Like
Yes.
loving ourselves is one of the biggest, maybe the biggest gift that we can give the world.
Hugely. Hugely. Hugely.
Yeah.
And it's hard often when we're told we shouldn't for so many reasons.
Yeah. Well, it's a practice, right? Everything that we do
Absolutely.
is a practice. And some things,
Absolutely.
the more that we can choose consciously the practices that we want to live, and how we show up, the more that we can just be
Hmm.
in the world and be co-creating this beautiful place.
Hmm.
Yeah. Jude said yes. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching or for tuning in later. There you can find some of Meg's work online at fatoncampus.com. And more information about them and their bio is in the description if you want to go back and check that out. Uh, and Philip says thank you to us both, and I'm going to say you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yeah. um, and if you enjoyed this, please think about liking, subscribing For right now, I'd like to just invite everyone to take a deep breath and just check in. Check in with your system. How do you feel now? Is it different than when you tuned in? Just notice if anything has changed or if it hasn't. And again, allow that to just be perfect. And then you can open your eyes when you're ready. And I'm just going to say my sign off. I love me, I love you, I love us, which actually comes from that song. I'll see you soon.